Wow, wow! There was a sound of splashing water in the spacious bathroom. A middle-aged man with a big shoulder and a round waist was sitting in the pool. Although he couldn't see the middle-aged man's face, he could still see the scar on his scalp and the complex tattoos on the back show his extraordinary identity. Brother Lee. A young man with a white towel around his waist pulled his slippers carefully and walked towards the middle-aged man sitting in the pool. This young man was about 30 years old, with a blue dragon tattooed on his back. But judging from his demeanor, this guy should be the younger brother of Brother Lee. The younger brother skillfully wetted the towel board, and then threw himself up behind Brother Lee. The movements looked very skilled, while Brother Lee was enjoying the service of the younger brother with a big cigar in his mouth. Xiaolin, how long have you been with Brother Lee? Brother Lee took a sip of his cigar and asked in a nonchalant manner. Brother Lee, it's been 3 years. If you didn't give me food when I released it, I would have starved to death. Xiaolin, who was standing behind, said gratefully. Xiaolin, after so many years, do you think Brother Lee has treated you badly? Bad treatment? Brother Lee treats me better than my own younger brother. To be able to follow a boss like you, Brother Lee, is a blessing in my life. Xiaolin accelerated the movements of his hands, and Brother Lee's tattooed back was frustrated. It turned slightly red, but it made the blue dragon on his body look more majestic. The blue dragon had a big mouth and seemed to always warn all those who were wrong to Brother Lee. Xiaolin, the batch of goods last week was delivered just like that. Brother, I can't figure it out. How did you say the note knew about this? Brother Lee suddenly turned around and said to Xiaolin, who was behind him. Asked. Brother Lee, is there something wrong with my brother? Tell me, I inserted him. Xiaolin stopped what he was doing, and said seriously and firmly. Put him in, who will rub my back in the future, Officer Lin. Brother Lee suddenly pulled a black star out of the water and placed it on Xiaolin's forehead. Lee. Brother Lee, don't be kidding, what Officer Lin, did you make a mistake? Xiaolin sat on the ground, his eyes fixed on the muzzle, and his lips trembled as he asked. That's right, if I hadn't lost this batch of goods, I haven't noticed that my brother who has been with me for 3 years is actually a police undercover officer, Officer Lin Ziyulin, you can really act. How the did I believe you? When Lin Qiu heard this, he knew he couldn't hide it. The leader of the drug cartel called Brother Lee knew his name, so it was useless for him to say anything. At this moment, a group of horses walked in from outside the door. They set up Lin Qiu from the ground, while the eldest named Li Ji stood up from the pool and took the bath towel handed over by the younger brother. I saw him dry his body unhurriedly, and then patted Lin Qiu's cheek contemptuously. Yanswili, my colleague will avenge me. Lin Qiu said viciously to Yanswili, known as Brother Lee. Hee, okay. I'm waiting for that day. Send Officer Lin on the road, do it a bit clean. Yanswili left the bathroom without looking back, while his horseboy wrapped Brother Lee in a towel and stayed behind pistol. A few people supported Lin Qiu and pressed him on the table of the pool, and finally said to Lin Qiu, Brother Lin, don't blame us. Boom! A jet of blood spurted into the bath, and the water in the entire bath slowly turned a dazzling red. Stop, stop for me. A panting young man was chasing a wretched middle-aged man with difficulty. The young man seemed to have exhausted his physical strength. He crossed his hips and followed the wretched middle-aged man in extreme pain. The middle-aged man, his physical strength is obviously much better than that of the young man, and he can even turn around and tease the pursuers behind him from time to time. The young man is anxious and angry, but his poor physical condition is really overwhelmed. Maybe the middle-aged man was too proud. When he turned around to humiliate the young man behind him, he accidentally collided with an oncoming bicycle, and then fell down after a dog gnawed on it. On the ground. When the young man saw this, he hurriedly rushed up, and then scuffled with the wretched middle-aged man. You bastard, exhibitionist, you are so nasty to harass elementary school students, watch me take you back to the police station and take care of you. Hee, it's up to you, I think you should go to the side. The wretched middle-aged man suddenly hugged the young man by his waist, and then threw him hard to his side. The young man's body is so weak that he was thrown down the stairs next to him. Below the stairs is the water platform of the park, which is several meters high from where they are now. The young man felt that he was thrown into the air, then fell head first, and then rolled down the stairs. Lin Police Department. Ah, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Lin Police Department fell down the stairs. Go and rescue the Lin Police Department. A group of people chased after him aggressively. The wretched middle-aged man who had just thrown the young man down the stairs knew that it was not good, and immediately grabbed a bicycle and ran away. After the chasing people arrived at the scene of the accident, several people ran down the stairs to check the injured Forest Police Department, while others continued to chase the wretched middle-aged man. The Police Department. The Police Department. Flower-shaped, the police department's head seems to be seriously injured, hurry up and call an ambulance. Senior Aizawa, you are here to take care of the police department, and I will call for support. What do you call for support? It's important to save people, so hurry up and call an ambulance. Who are you? My name is Lin Chiu, who are you? My name is Lin Zihui, and I'm a criminal police officer. Detective. It seems that I am too. I seem to be dead. It doesn't matter if I say it. Lin Chiu looked at the body on the hydrophilic platform, and it seemed that the owner of the body was standing beside him. Lin Chiu realized that the detective named Lin Zihui seemed to be dead. He knew that feeling. Out of good intentions, Lin Chiu reached out and patted Lin Zihui on the shoulder, trying to comfort Lin Zihui's soul. But after the souls of the two people came into contact with each other, a strange reaction occurred immediately. Immediately after the two merged into one, the fusion of souls began. When all this happens, the world seems to enter a void space. What's the matter? I'm Lin Chiu. Or Lin Zihui. Why do so many things pop into my mind that I don't know about? National First Class Civil Servant Examination, what is that? Lin Zihui's Police Department Supplement. I'm Lin Zihui, the police officer of the police department. A month later, at Sakurada Gate Station in Tokyo. Lin Zihui walked out of the subway station in a neat suit, and then walked towards the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police Department not far behind. Since the last time he chased the suspect and was thrown down the stairs, Lin Chiu spent a month in the hospital before recovering from his injuries, which made him feel very embarrassed. Originally, a bureaucrat like him who passed the exam and directly served as a police subordinate was not very recognized by his subordinates in the Metropolitan Police Department. He was easily thrown off the steps by the criminal suspect, which showed his disadvantage in physical confrontation. Let Lin Zihui lead his subordinates. With this worry, Lin Zihui walked into the building of the Metropolitan Police Department, bought a cup of bottled coffee from the automatic beverage machine, and then came to his office. As soon as he pushed them away, Lin Zihui saw two subordinates standing upright in front of him. Police Department, congratulations on your discharge from the hospital, it's really a subordinate dereliction of duty to hurt you. The two bowed solemnly to Lin Chiu as they spoke. It's me who is careful, don't take it to heart, Aizawa, Hua-sing, find a place to have a drink in the evening. Lin Zihui hurriedly bowed in return. Although Lin Zihui is the leader of the two, regardless of age or seniority, Lin Zihui should call Aizawa Yuichi and Kagita Toru two seniors. Lin Zihui's position in the police department was directly obtained by passing the civil service examination. It is said that 6 million people have taken the National First Class Civil Service Examination since its establishment in the 1950s, but only 300,000 people have passed the examination, which shows how fierce the competition is. The National First Class Civil Service Examination requires participants to have a university degree. As long as they pass the examination, they will become elite bureaucrats with a bright future. Most of the elites who pass the examination are from prestigious schools such as Dongda and Waseda. This is why Lin Ziyi at a young age, he will become the boss of Hanakata and Aizawa, because everyone's starting point is different. Therefore, although Aizawa and Hanagata have been in the police for many years, they can only survive to the level of the inspection minister because of their background. For them, if they can be admitted to the police department before retirement, then there will be no regrets in life. But for Lin Ziyi, as long as he survives the first year's assessment period, it is almost a certainty that he will be promoted to the police department. Please be sure to honor the police, we are really sorry for hurting you. Aizawa and Hanagata replied quickly. Okay, this matter is over, my life is saved by you anyway, and it's too embarrassing to talk about it. Let's talk about the drinking at night. What happened to the hateful guy who put me in the hospital? Lin Ziyi didn't want to bother with these false rituals anymore. He quickly used the case to divert the topic. After all, the pervert who put him in the hospital just ran away from him, which really made people feel annoyed. Police, don't you need to rest for a while? Kagita asked worriedly. I've been in the hospital for a long time, and I've wanted to bring this to justice. Has he appeared again during this time? If Lin Ziyi hadn't merged his soul, he would be a little bit unbearable. Missing hospitality. But that's how this country behaves and is hierarchical. The police department, since you were injured last time, this guy hasn't appeared again, so we don't have any clues about this period of time. Aizawa said with a little embarrassment. That's it. This case is really difficult to handle. Lin Ziyi opened the can of coffee in his hand, and then drank it. Speaking of the who hurt Lin Ziyi, he was a pervert at all. He would appear from time to time near the girls' school in Bunkyo district, following the female students who came home from school. But this guy didn't sexually assault these girls, he just took off his pants and silently leaked his little bird. Because most of the victims were minors, the Metropolitan Police Department was used. Bunkyo district is a well-known educational district with many famous schools, especially those private schools. The students who can enroll are basically either rich or expensive. Naturally, the Metropolitan Police will not stand idly by when such bad things happen in such a place. But this kind of random crime is the hardest case to solve, because you never know when the suspect will show up. What's more, he still carried his criminal tools with him, and there were hardly any traces of crime that could identify the suspect's identity at the scene. Victimized underage female students can't ask any helpful clues at all, and usually when this kind of thing happens, parents don't take the initiative to report the case to the police. Phew! If we can't catch this guy at the scene, we basically have no hope of solving the case. It was such a pity last time. It was a pity that this guy committed the crime with great difficulty, but unfortunately let him run away. Lin Ziyi apologized again. He said, to know that wanting to run into this brother Walker is basically like buying a lottery ticket. Lin Ziyi and his two subordinates squatted and guarded near Wenjing district for a month before they encountered this guy who came out to commit the crime again. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com, but an unsuccessful arrest should have already shocked the snake. As long as the IQ is sufficient, Brother Walker should not come out to commit crimes again in a short period of time. Police, you don't have to feel sorry. The last time you fought with him, you left some of his hair. With this evidence, we can convict him even if we didn't catch him on the spot. Huazingta told Lin Ziyi comforted. Although no suspects have been caught, Lin Ziyi is actually not under any pressure. The bureaucratic system of RB is basically an iron job, and promotions and salary increases are done step by step, especially for an elite group of bureaucrats like Lin Ziyi. In this way, in the Metropolitan Police Department, the emphasis is on no fault but also merit. There is no need to worry about being fired, and the income is much richer than that of most office workers. Compared with Chinese police officer Lin Qiu's dreadful undercover career, he worked as a police officer in RB. Simply too happy. Jingle bell. Lin suddenly rang a phone call, and Lin Ziyi picked up the phone. Is Lin Qiu from the police department? Yes, it's me. Someone in the port area reported the discovery of the body. Take your subordinates for a trip. Ah, yes. As soon as he heard that there was a case, Lin Ziyi immediately called Izawa Yuichi and Kagita Toru to set off. They put on their coats, got their cars from the underground garage, and set off towards the port area. The police department, after we arrive at the scene in a while, I'll just go and see Kagita. Izawa said kindly, because Lin Ziyi is a novice after all, and he probably has no experience in looking at corpses. But it's not good. Thank you for your kindness, Izawa, I'm fine. Lin Qiu smiled bitterly inwardly when he heard what the other party meant. Do you think it's him? Lin Ziyi asked suspiciously, while Izawa Yuichi and Kagita Toru squatted beside the corpse, and the three carefully looked at the deceased's appearance. Lin Qiu looked at it for a long time, but still couldn't determine whether the deceased was that guy. It looks like it, but it's hard to say if it's soaked in the sea like this. Izawa Yu looked at it for a long time, but he was still not sure, so he silently looked at Hua Xingtong, hoping that Hua Xingtong could determine the deceased based on his impression. Identity of. I think it should be that guy. Hua Xingtong was obviously more confident. It doesn't matter, go back and wait for the scientific research to compare the hair samples we handed in. Lin Qiu stood up, put his hands together, and saluted the dead in silence, as did Yuichi Izawa and Toru Kagita. Then the three walked along the trestle to the place where the body was found. It's not that Lin Ziyi has a bad memory, it's just that the corpse has been eroded too much. There was a big hole in the brain of the deceased, and the brain tissue had been cleaned up by animals in the sea. Just when we observed the corpse, several crabs the size of fingernails ran out one after another. The research staff collected it as evidence. However, because the corpse was soaked in the sea, there was no unpleasant smell of high corruption at the scene, but the evidence should have been washed away by the sea. Hua Xing, go ask who found the corpse and see what clues there are. Lin Qiu ordered while observing the surrounding environment. Although it is located in the port area, people are rarely seen here. Generally, some fishing enthusiasts come here. Not far away, divers sent by Kesu Research are searching for evidence underwater, but since this water area is a favorite place for fishing enthusiasts, it means that the nearby currents should be very complicated, and the nutrients brought by the currents are fish gathering here. However, it also brought a lot of trouble to the proof work, and the probability of leaving evidence here is almost zero. The police department, this is Mr. Moriichiro who found the body. Hanagata came over with an old man dressed in casual clothes, and the old man looked at it for fishing. After Hua Xing introduced Lin Ziyi to the old man, Lin Ziyi bowed slightly to the old man, then took out the business card in his suit pocket, and said, I'm Lin Ziyi from the police department's search section 1. This is my business card. Could you tell me how you found the body? It was probably 4 o'clock in the morning, It was still dark, and I wanted to drink a cup of hot coffee after I got off the pole, but suddenly something floated up from the water, and I thought it was some wicked person who threw it away. Garbage, I was thinking of picking it up with a fishing net and taking it away, but I found it. I found a dead man, and I was so frightened that I almost fell into the sea. The old man said it in a more organized way, probably it has been questioned several times by the police. However, his testimony was not very helpful. The corpse was dead for a day or two, and if the deceased was really Brother Yuniao, he was a strong man who could throw Lin Ziyi down the steps. This old man was definitely not his opponent. It seems that we still have to wait for the autopsy report. Izawa, Hanagata, go back first and record a statement for Mr. Moriichiro. Let's see if we can confirm the identity of this guy, and then decide the direction of the next investigation. Lin Ziyi explained to the person in charge of the scientific research and research at the scene, and they promised to go back and conduct a DNA test on the deceased to see if this guy was a showman. Lin Zihui was a little fortunate to be able to leave a hair sample of brother Li Yuniao, otherwise, if brother Li Yuniao really died and he could not prove his identity, the case of body madness in Wenjing district would become an unsolved case that could never be solved. On the way back, Kagita and Lin Zihui have been recalling the characteristics of Niao Niao brother, hoping to connect Niao Niao brother and the deceased. Aizawa Yuichi, who is in charge of driving, uses his rear-view mirror to look at Lin sitting in the back seat from time to time. Repair 1. The police are all sensitive. Aizawa Yuichi was worried that Lin Zihui would feel uncomfortable when he saw the body for the first time. Lin Zihui was his boss. Unsurprisingly, Aizawa would work under Lin Zihui for many years. If Lin Zihui's performance is too bad, Aizawa and the others will naturally be looked down upon by the other colleagues in the search class. But seeing Lin Zihui's performance on the scene today, although there is no bright spot, he is basically very calm. The police department, I didn't expect you to be so calm when you saw the body of the victim for the first time. It's really admirable. To explain something, so he asked straight out. Yet, I had a serious car accident when I was a child. Since then, I've been less afraid of things. It can be considered a blessing in disguise. Lin Zihui made up an excuse. Collecting evidence is a meticulous and patient job, but thanks to Lin Zihui's explanation before leaving the scene, he was lucky enough to get the DNA identification report sent by Kesoyan before leaving get off work. It's really the same person. Although Lin Zihui's heart was already prepared for this result, he still thought it was too coincidental. Could it be that his first case in his RB police career ended like this? The subject of the investigation died in the sea in the port area, and when he was fished up, only a skin was eaten by the animals in the sea. Does this mean that we can close the case in Bunkyo district? Kagita asked uncertainly. The molestation case in Bunkyo district took everyone more than a month, not counting the assistance of the police station below. I thought that the last arrest failed to make the criminal suspect take precautions, but who knew that his body could be fished out of the sea? How did this guy die? Did he die from a blunt blow to the back of the head? Lin Zihui asked the researcher, pulling him. Although the detailed autopsy report will take several days to come out, judging from the gap in the victim's head, there is no sign of healing, which means that when the victim was hit on the head, he either died on the spot, or it was someone who was beaten after death, Kesoyan's colleague replied. What about the weapon? Can you know what the weapon is like? Lin Zihui asked again. From the perspective of the striking surface, it should be a smooth curved surface. It is hard to say what it is. No murder weapon was found at the scene. The colleagues of Kesoyan obviously had to go back to work, so she kept telling Lin Jiu endlessly. I felt unhappy that the problem was gone, but Lin Zihui was the police department's supplement, so she couldn't refuse face to face. Police, we have to prepare for the next autopsy, so. One last question? Can we confirm the identity of the victim? Lin Zihui said finally. I'm sorry, the only evidence we have at the moment is the victim's body. After saying this, the other party hurriedly made an excuse to leave. Today's fish is very fresh, do you want to try some sushi? The owner of the izakaya took out a high-quality snapper from the counter and placed it in front of Lin Zihui and the others, but what happened to the white fish now? See how it makes people feel no appetite. I'd better forget it, I don't want to see raw fish in the last few days. Me too. Boss, let's eat skewers for a few days. 3 bottles of beer. Originally, I made an appointment to come out for a drink at night, but the case during the day obviously made everyone lose their appetite. In fact, Lin Zihui feels okay, but after all, half of his soul is Chinese, so Lin Qiu is not very interested in sushi and other things, but the skewers are still good. The 3 ordered a few snacks, then found a table and sat down. Everyone took off their suits and ties. After a few glasses of beer, the strict hierarchy between the superior and the inferior finally blurred. Aizawa, Kagita. I remember what happened last time. If it wasn't because of my injury, maybe you guys could catch that guy. Lin Xiaoyi took advantage of the drink and turned to Aizawa and Kagita who were sitting beside him. He bowed solemnly. Although Lin Xiaoyi has not been a police officer for a long time in RB, from the last chase, Lin Xiaoyi has confirmed that his two subordinates are still very good. At that time, Lin Xiu was bleeding. Although it looked scary, as long as the two of them were judged by common sense, they should know that Lin Xiaoyi would not be in danger. Under the circumstances at the time, Aizawa and Hanagata could choose one to stay and wait for rescue, and the other to continue chasing the suspect, or simply ask the crowd on the roadside to take care of Lin Xiaoyi. But both of them chose to stay by Lin Xiaoyi's side until the ambulance arrived. From this, it can be seen that they are not the kind of people who can sacrifice the lives of colleagues for promotion. Aizawa and Kagita were still very moved to hear the boss's heartfelt thanks. After all, his actions have been sincerely thanked by his boss, which is a very honorable thing for his subordinates. However, even if the RB people have a good relationship, they do not dare to call their leaders brothers like the Chinese. So they still respectfully returned the salute to Lin Xiaoyi, but the sitting posture was changed from sitting upright to sitting cross-legged. Congratulations to the police department, you broke the first case just after you were discharged from the hospital. Hua Xin raised the wine glass to toast Lin Xiaoyi. After Lin Xiaoyi, Hua Xin and Aizawa clinked the glasses, they drank it all. It wasn't until everyone had finished drinking the glass of wine that Lin Xiaoyi sighed and said, "Case closed? I'm afraid the case can't be closed yet." "Why? Didn't you find the suspect?" Kagita asked in confusion. "Only the last case has a complete chain of evidence. In the first 3 cases, we have no evidence to prove that this guy did it, unless we can take the victimized elementary school students to the morgue and let them eat the fish and crabs. Half of the guys recognized." Lin Xiaoyi explained to Hua Xin. Aizawa, who hadn't said a word just now, didn't seem to realize this either, and he put down the wine glass he just raised. Lin Xiu still knows the situation of his subordinates very well. Hua Xin graduated from a junior college and was admitted through sports special recruitment. After graduation, he has been patrolling the police station below. Later, by chance, he caught a wanted criminal before entering police department. Aizawa's background seems to be similar. Aizawa graduated from high school. After joining the police, he also worked in the police station below. However, relying on his perseverance and luck, Aizawa cracked a theft case in his jurisdiction. There are other cases on the back of people, and the value of the cases is huge, so Aizawa has the qualifications to enter the Metropolitan Police Department. However, Lin Xiaoyi's background is not much better. Lin Xiaoyi graduated from Kagoshima University. Although it is not a bad school, he has nothing to show off. In the Metropolitan Police Department, Toda, Kyoto, Uesda, and the police department that graduated from Ko caught a lot. Lin Xiaoyi's learning ability is not bad. After all, the National First Class Civil Servant exam is not easy at all. If it wasn't for Lin Xiu's soul transmigration, Lin Xiaoyi wouldn't have a detective who really understands criminal investigation techniques. The bureaucrats of the elite group are here to serve as officials, and most of the police officers who were promoted to the Metropolitan Police Department on the basis of cases they solved by chance have not received systematic criminal investigation education. Only those criminal police officers who have been promoted will be sent to the United States to continue their studies, but when such people come back, they will basically choose to leave the frontline team. Therefore, the professional level of the departments that really participate in the case detection work can be imagined. Seeing that everyone was a little discouraged, Lin Xiu hurriedly comforted, "Don't be discouraged. We found this guy's body anyway. As long as we find his true identity, the subsequent investigation will have a direction." "Police, do you have any clues?" Aizawa hurriedly asked. There are no clues, but I looked at the case file again. There are a total of 4 molestation cases recorded by the suspects. The first case happened in the private Maru Academy in Bunkyo district. According to the records at the time, the suspects he took off his pants, quickly put them on, and then ran away in a panic. You don't think his courage was actually very small, and he had no experience at the time. Although reading www.yuyugonshu.com, the target is a primary school student, but the suspect is very panicked. Lin Zihuyi picked up a bunch of grilled chicken meatballs and put them in his mouth. The meatballs were chewy and the sauce was very distinctive. Lin Zihuyi suggested that everyone try it too, but Aizawa and Kagita were obviously more concerned about the case. The second case, I remember, was at Qingshan Elementary School in Bunkyo district. The transcript said that after taking off his pants, he walked towards the victim yelled at the suspect and ran away. Hanagata recalled with effort. Yes, but this time the suspect is much stronger than the last time? Although the target of the attack is still a primary school student, he has already dared to take the initiative to go to the victim. Lin Chiu commented. In the third case, the suspect hugged the victim from behind, but there were pedestrians who happened to pass by on that road, so he ran away again. Aizawa spent a lot of time on this case, passing by Lin Ziyi as a reminder. Aizawa also noticed the suspect's growing courage. The fourth case was when we met him. The protocol person was holding the victim while doing DIY, and then we caught him on the spot. He probably felt that he had not been caught 3 times before, so he became more and more courageous. And although the victim is still an elementary school student, she is already a senior. Police, you mean that the criminal suspects have been improving their criminal methods and are still challenging more difficult targets? Aizawa and Hanagata suddenly felt a sense of relief. Without success several times in a row, do you think he will take a risk? So the last time must be the place the suspect is most familiar with and considers himself the safest, until the crime is recent and the principle of least effort? The fourth case, it's very likely that there is some connection with the criminal suspect. Lin Zihuyi looked at his subordinates with satisfaction and said with a smile. Hello, I'm Lin Zihuyi of the police department of the first section of the search department. This is my subordinate, Aizawa and Hwasing. Lin Zihuyi led his subordinates to stand outside the dissection room of the department, bowed slightly, and introduced himself. Hello, I'm Cho Tanaka, a forensic researcher in the forensics class. The other party bowed in return, and then let everyone into the room. Lin Zihuyi and others were asked to put all their personal belongings outside, and then put on protective clothing as required. Only then was allowed to enter the demolition room. It has been 2 days since the body was found, and the forensic work of Kesu research is still going on. Because the body was thrown into the sea, the microorganisms and scavengers in the ocean caused serious damage to the body, which caused serious damage to the body. The forensic work of Kesu research has brought great trouble. The case of the murder of the criminal suspect has been handed over to another group to take charge. However, he is still in the internship stage of the police department, and it is very likely that he will be sent to other departments to serve as the police department in the future. Therefore, as long as a criminal case occurs, Lin Zihuyi has the opportunity to participate in on-site work and accept the guidance of his predecessors. This is why the port area will notify him of his presence after the body is found. Although the murder case is not under the control of Lin Chiu, the victim of the port case is the suspect in the serial molestation case he is responsible for. He is obliged to find out the true identity of the criminal suspect as soon as possible and let the victims of the first 3 cases identify the murderer. So Lin Chiu didn't wait for the end of the forensic work of the scientific research, and couldn't wait to find the door. As soon as Lin Chiu walked into the dissection room, the suspect's body was quietly placed on the dissection table. The flesh on his chest was cut in a I shape and divided into 2 sides. The ribs were cut and removed from the chest cavity. Although it looks a little scary, it is much cleaner than when it was just fished out of the sea. The evidence table around the dissection room was densely filled with evidence found from the corpse. They were photographed one by one and then archived. Just by seeing these evidence, Lin Zihuyi knew that the forensics class was absolutely impossible in the past few days. Not easy. Can you determine the time of death? Lin Zihuyi asked proactively. No, the corpse was damaged too badly. Cho Tanaka replied with a wry smile. Can I see the corpse up close? Lin Qiu always asked Cho Tanaka for instructions. He was not a professional forensic doctor, so it would be bad if he disturbed other people's work. Yes, but you can't do it yourself. I can do it for you if you need anything. Cho Tanaka quickly reminded. After Lin Zihuyi got permission, he leaned down and looked at the corpse from a close distance. There was a big hole in the back of the deceased's head, and the broken skull had been removed and placed in a glass petri dish. With the help of the shadowless lamp, Lin Zihuyi could see that there was no white brain tissue inside. There were also some scars on the face of the deceased, but they had festered. If you look closely, you can see the slight bite marks on the scars. Most of these are caused by creatures on the seabed, shrimps and crabs on the seabed. And some scavengers will treat the corpses in the sea as a hearty meal, especially those crab creatures. They can use their tongues to tear open the flesh of the dead, get into the interior of the corpse, and eat nutrient-rich internal organs, and some other scavengers will also enter, so although the exterior of the corpse is relatively complete, the interior has been eaten up. Cho Tanaka introduced the situation of the corpse to Shuqi Lin from a professional point of view. Lin Zihuyi listened carefully and observed carefully. At the same time, he also recalled the scene when the deceased was arrested that day. Lin Zihuyi remembered that day he took his subordinates to perform other tasks near the crime scene. He was passing an alley and accidentally heard the sound of a woman crying. He quietly hid at the entrance of the alley and saw the suspect molesting a girl. At that time, the physical features of the suspect were very similar to those of the suspect in the serial molestation case in Bunkyo district, so Lin Zihuyi quietly notified Aizawa to come and support him by text message. It's a pity that Lin Zihuyi's heart softened and couldn't stand the miserable cry of the victim, so he took action in advance before Aizawa and Hanagata came over. Lin Zihuyi rushed up when his brain was hot. After the suspect found him, he put on his pants and ran away. Lin Zihuyi followed closely behind, and while running, contacted Aizawa by phone to inform him of his direction. Lin Qiu tried his best to follow the suspect and ran into the park by the river. When the suspect turned a corner, his feet stumbled, and Lin Qiu jumped at the chance. Then they got into a fight with the suspect. Lin Zihuyi's strength was not as strong as the opponent's, so he could only tear him apart. With all his strength, he grabbed his hair and ears. Then the other party's ear seemed to be torn by himself. The suspect screamed in pain, picked himself up angrily, and pushed him down the steps. Yes, there is blood on the ear, I remember it very clearly. The suspect did indeed suffer injuries to his ears. Lin Zihuyi recalled the scene a month ago. He walked to the suspect's head again, leaned down, and observed the suspect's right ear closely. If you don't remember, there should be a wound on the earlobe, which was left by yourself. As soon as Lin Qiu wanted to do it, Cho Tanaka stopped him. Cho Tanaka said displeasedly, "Police, don't disturb the suspect's body." Researcher Tanaka, the victim of Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com has a laceration behind the ear, which should be caused by me. Can you help me take a look? Lin Zihuyi asked. Cho Tanaka came over and gently turned the victim's neck to the left to a suitable angle. Then under the light to observe the part behind the victim's ear, there is indeed a wound there. Aizawa and Kagata also gathered, and everyone looked at the wound seriously. Cho Tanaka picked up a pinch and slowly lifted the skin at the wound. Hey? That's weird. Cho Tanaka switched the tweezers to his left hand, picked up another pair of tweezers with a pointed head, and carefully put them down into the wound, and then picked out something like grains of rice from inside. Researcher Tanaka, is this? Aizawa asked curiously. It seems to be the eggs of housefly, and maggots have not yet formed. Cho Tanaka said while taking pictures of the wound with a camera, and then collected the eggs of housefly in a petri dish and marked them. Lin Zihui originally wanted Tanaka-cho to observe the degree of healing of the wound, because the wound was caused when Lin Zihui was sent to the hospital. If you can estimate how many days it will take for the wound to heal to the current condition, you can know who the deceased is. Lin Zihui was killed a few days after he was injured. This is what Lin Zihui has come up with now, the only way to determine the time of death. The egg of the housefly? Wasn't he thrown into the sea after he died? Hua Xing asked suspiciously. The wound is very fresh, and there is no obvious sign of healing, so it should have been killed not long after the injury. Cho Tanaka added. That means that this guy was placed somewhere after his death, and after a while, he was thrown into the sea. Lin Zihui concluded. Outside a meeting room on the 13th floor of the Metropolitan Police Department headquarters building, the sign of the search headquarters of the murder and abandoned corpse case on the trestle bridge in the port area is hung here. The police officers involved in the investigation of this case are gathering in twos and threes in the conference room to participate in the first case analysis meeting after the establishment of the search headquarters. Most of the main force of this investigation comes from the criminals and murderers who searched the 9th department, so the head of the department is naturally the police department of Kamaki Ryutaro of the 9 departments. However, there have been some different situations in this case so far. The victims themselves are the suspects of the other 4 cases of indecent assault of minors. Therefore, the situation analysis meeting of the search headquarters this time has also called for the 2nd Department of Sexual Crime Investigation. Linjiua Police Department. The focus of the case analysis meeting is to formulate the next investigation direction based on the existing clues. Because Lin Zihui recognized the wound on the victim's right ear, the forensic doctor can easily deduce the real time of death of the deceased on this basis. According to the judgment of the forensic doctors, the victim should have been killed on the day Lin Zihui was sent to the hospital, so the wound on the suspect's right ear showed no signs of healing. In addition, the housefly eggs found in the wound also confirmed that the vicinity of the trestle was not the first crime scene. Seeing that everyone was almost there, the Kamaki Ryutaro Police Department nodded to his subordinates, and the case analysis meeting officially began. Okay, it's not the first day for everyone here to be a police officer. Tell me about your situation. What news is there from Kesoyan? Kamaki Ryutaro moved the microphone to himself, looking at the seat below him. The police officers who were watching asked in a serious tone. Report to the minister. With the help of Lin Zihui's police department, we have determined the time of death of the deceased. It should be the 7th of last month, and the time when the body of the deceased was thrown into the sea, according to what we did in the area where the incident occurred. The biological environment simulation test confirmed that it should be about 10 days before the body was found. Tanaka-cho, the forensic researcher in charge of this case, got up and replied. Can you determine the identity of the deceased? Kamaki Ryutaro asked while looking at Cho Tanaka. I'm sorry, but not yet. There are no obvious surgical marks on the body. Although we have recovered some of the fingerprints of the deceased, we have not found similar information in the database. There is nothing in the clothes of the deceased that can prove his identity. Cho Tanaka explained embarrassedly. Okay, I got it. Which one is Shokikan? Kamaki Ryutaro asked the audience. It's me, this minister. Lin Zihui quickly got up and bowed in response. I heard that you have only come to the Metropolitan Police Department for a month. You did a good job. Kamaki Ryutaro praised. Haha, I will continue to work hard. Lin Zihui hurriedly responded with a bow. As a junior in the organization, it is a very honorable thing for Lin Zihui to be praised by Ryutaro Kamaki. After all, it is not an easy task for a rookie police officer to be recognized by an experienced old criminal police officer. Many police officers present looked at Lin Zihui with admiration. Anyone who is familiar with the Shenmue Police Department knows that it is not easy to get his compliments. It would be nice not to be scolded by him at ordinary times. I didn't expect the sun to hit the west today. Out. Shenmue Utaro didn't say anything more. The clues provided by Kesoyan are really too few. Based on the current investigation progress, the clues are almost all broken, and there are still some things about the victim who molested minors. Possibility of breakthrough. This made Kamaki Ryutaro's brows slowly wrinkle. Zaiwachikan, what did you find there? Kamaki Ryutaro called Lin Zaihuyi's name again. Minister, we only know that the deceased was a suspect in a minor molestation case, and it is very likely to be involved in the other 3 molestation cases. But we have no direct evidence to link the first 3 cases to the suspects together. Lin Chiu replied succinctly. A molestation case? Do you have any ideas for investigation? Kamaki Ryunashuk asked again. We want to conduct a large-scale investigation in the areas where the criminal suspects have been active, but our team is limited, so there is no progress at present. Although Lin Zaihuyi said that there was no progress, in fact, he did not let Aizawa and Hanada go. Thoughts to investigate. There are only 3 people in the whole group. How can the 3 people carry out the investigation work? They can't finish it if they are exhausted. On the other hand, the Shenmue Police Department is investigating the murder of the criminal suspect. Anyway, there is nothing to do now. Why don't you help yourself to solve the case of continuous molestation of underage girls first? Although Lin Zaihuyi didn't say it clearly, Shenmue could hear his thoughts. But for now, that seems to be the only way to go. The real identity of the victim is found out through successive molestation cases, and then the social relationship of the victim is investigated. UU reading www.ifuyugonshu.com is lucky, as long as the murderer is not a randomly selected target to kill, it is very likely to find clues about the murderer. After thinking about these joints, the Shenmue Police Department did not have too much hypocrisy in this regard. Anyway, the investigation of the murder case and the help of the Sexual Crime Investigation 2 series cracked a serial molestation case is also considered a personal favor, and the debt of favor will always be repaid. Everyone, since there is no progress now, let's start with the several molestation cases in the hands of the Forest Police Department. From today onwards, everyone will leave the headquarters and go to the police station and police station below to investigate the identity of the victims. I will request more resources from your superiors, so that the 5th Division Headquarters, the Division Headquarters is a branch between the Police Department and the Metropolitan Government, that governs Bunkyo Ward will fully cooperate with our investigation. Continue to restore the identity and appearance of the deceased, and see if we can simulate a photo that is not too scary, at least for minors to identify. There are ways to allow minors to identify suspects, and also, investigate the missing persons reports received in the last month to see if there are any that match the physical characteristics of the victims, and focus on following up. The Shenmue Police Department saw that in addition to the time-consuming and labor-intensive there are not too many clues in the investigation, so I directly start to arrange the next step. Hearing that the people from the 9th series were willing to help, Lin Zaihuyi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Everyone, look at the Asahi shadow, the golden cherry blossom emblem, the symbol of the RB police, on your chest, rising to the east, sweeping away the haze. The sky is clear, and it is our bounden duty to seek justice for the dead. Please everyone. Shenmue Police Department got up and bowed deeply to everyone. Haha. Everyone in the audience stood up and saluted at the same time. I'm sorry, is the Forest Police Department here? A lovely woman suddenly appeared at the door and asked embarrassedly. Ah. Who are you? As soon as Lin Qiu saw someone visiting, he quickly got up to greet him. I'm Miki Nakayama from the 2nd Department of Sexual Crime Investigation, and I was ordered to report to the Forest Police Department. Zhongshan Miki bowed deeply to Lin Zaihuyi, and Lin Zaihuyi quickly returned the salute. Then Lin Zaihuyi introduced himself. I'm Lin Zaihuyi, you are Miki who was sent to our group, you are welcome to join us. Ah, Lin Police Department, please take care of me when we meet for the first time. Nakayama Miki bowed to Lin Qiu again and said. Please don't hold the ceremony. Although Lin Zihuyi said so, he still returned the ceremony to the other party. Then he introduced Izawa Yuichi and Kagita Toru to Nakayama Miki, and everyone had another polite greeting. I submitted a report to my superiors and applied to transfer a woman to our search work. After all, we are engaged in a sexual crime investigation, and women have a natural advantage in communicating with victims. Lin Qiu explained to his subordinates. I will work hard, and I will not let you down in the police department. Miki Nakayama said with a serious expression. However, the other party is young and petite and cute, and the words coming out of her mouth always make people feel uneasy, but Lin Zihuyi wants such a subordinate. Although the other party didn't look like a police officer at all, Lin Zihuyi felt that the candidates sent by his superiors were very much to his taste. Because the victims of serial molestation cases are all minors, it is actually easier to communicate with a woman who does not look like a police officer. Hanagata, hand over the information of the first case to Miki, Izawa, and prepare the vehicle. Miki, we are going to go out together now to visit the victim. When you get there, it is up to you to inquire about the situation of the victim at the time of the crime. The information is on the way. Ah, haha. Miki didn't expect to have something to do on the first day of the report. Lin Zihuyi explained as he put on his jacket and started walking out the door. Miki and the others followed Lin Zihuyi and left the office. For the large-scale investigation, it is enough for the people who searched the headquarters to be in charge. Lin Zihuyi didn't intend to let his team spend all their energy on the investigation. Instead, he wanted to make a breakthrough from the victims of several molestation cases. From the suspect's choice of victims, it can be seen that the prey chosen by the suspect actually has certain commonalities. For example, the victims are all limited to Bunkyo district, and they are all elementary school students. Lin Zihuyi wanted to know whether the suspect was looking for a random prey or a specific prey. These things cannot be reflected in the existing confessions. The phrase that the seniors often talk about is called the scene 100 times. Since there are doubts in the heart, the best way is to go to the scene to have a look, or find the victim and witnesses to describe some specific details of the suspect when he committed the crime, and maybe there will be some new discoveries. Half an hour later, Lin Zihuyi and others came to the door of the victim Kaoru Ishii's house. This is a building that looks quite luxurious. Judging from the buildings of the surrounding neighbors, this is a high-end residential area. Who are you? Not long after the doorbell rang, the hostess in the house opened the door and saw 3 men and 1 woman standing outside, so she asked suspiciously. I'm Lin Zihuyi from the police department's search section 1. I'm in charge of investigating a molestation case that happened a few months ago. I wonder if we can ask a few more questions. Lin Zihuyi took out from his pocket while explaining. I got the police account and showed it to the other party to prove my identity as a police officer. When we reported the case, we already told everything we knew at the police station. My daughter finally forgot about it. It's really embarrassing for you to come here again. The hostess said displeased. I'm sorry, I'm very sorry for disturbing you again, but sometimes investigations are like this. If the parties say more than a few times, they will recall important details. Please forgive us for being abrupt. Lin Zihuyi quickly explained. But you always make us very distressed. If I knew we would not report the case, my daughter has not been violated anyway. The hostess said, still dissatisfied. Ma'am, if the criminals keep going free, your daughter may be in danger again. Until we catch the real criminal, your daughter can hardly be called safe. Lin Zihuyi explained patiently. Under the repeated persuasion of Lin Zihuyi and others, the mother of the victim Kaoru Ishii finally agreed to Lin Zihuyi's request. Lin Zihuyi and the others took off their shoes on the porch and walked into Kaoru Ishii's house. The little girl happened to be doing her homework after school. With the consent of the victim's mother, Mickey begins a conversation with Kaoru Ishii. Xiaosuan, could you please excuse me, the police uncle and aunt want to ask you a few questions about that bad uncle a few months ago. After Mickey said these few words, the little girl looked at everyone present, her eyes turned from everyone, and finally returned to Nakayama Miki. Nakayama Miki squatted down, keeping her eyes at the same height as the little girl. Probably because Miki really didn't have the repulsive feeling of the police, the little girl agreed after a little hesitation. Although the arrival of Lin Zihui and others made the hostess unhappy, the hostess still served tea to the guests. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Lin Zihui and others bowed slightly to express their gratitude, but their eyes were fixed on Miki and Ishii Kaoru. Xiaosuan, can you tell my aunt what happened that day? Miki asked in a kind tone. Xiaoxuan nodded, and then, under Miki's questioning, began to recall what happened that day. Kaoru Ishii's narration at the beginning is not very different from the content in the transcript. It's just that because things have been going on for a long time, there are some discrepancies at certain points in time. This is a normal phenomenon. Lin Zihui listened quietly without saying a word, silently answering the evidence in his mind and the contents of the case file. Xiaosuan, after the appearance of the bad uncle, did you ever do anything special? As the question deepened, it was finally the turn of the most crucial question. The bad uncle suddenly stood in front of me, and then he opened the windbreaker like this. He was not wearing clothes, I was startled by him, and then I cried, and then the bad uncle saw I cried, took a few steps back, like this, and then ran away. Kaoru Ishii was obviously not affected too much by this incident. When she narrated the incident, she was even able to imitate the actions of the criminal suspect. As soon as Lin Xiu looked at Kaoru Ishii's performance, he didn't look like a victim who was severely traumatized at all. In fact, the nature of the first case is not so bad. If it wasn't for the victim being a minor, this was just an ordinary case of debauchery, and the criminal police wouldn't be bothered at all. Although Kaoru Ishii's new confession is not much different from the original one, there is not much difference in the content. However, being able to listen to the client's retelling, still brought a new experience to Lin Zihui. Lin Zihui got a very vivid impression from Kaoru Ishii's narration. This bad uncle is not that scary. By the time everyone left the victim Kaoru Ishii's house, it was almost time for get off work. Lin Zihui suggested that everyone find a pub and have a good drink. After all, it was a blessing to have a lovely woman in the group. How about we go to eat charcoal barbecued meat? Don't be polite to me, even if it's a welcome dinner for Mickey. Lin Xiu greeted everyone, and his subordinates naturally would not object. Anyway, today's work ended early. It's time to relax in the evening. So everyone got into the car and returned to the Metropolitan Police Department to return the vehicle, and then took a taxi to Akasaka. This generation is the closest consumer place to the RB political core area, surrounded by high-rise buildings and terrifyingly high housing prices. A large number of hotels, high-end restaurants, and other entertainment venues are gathered here. Lin Zihui chose to entertain the new subordinates here, which can fully express the importance of the subordinates. Of course, the cost is naturally expensive. Lin Zihui chose a well-received charcoal barbecue restaurant. Everyone can get acquainted with each other and discuss the next step of the case. By the way, Mickey, do you want to drink beer? Lin Zihui and the others ordered beer, but they didn't know if Mickey could drink it. It was the first time to have dinner with others, so it would be better to ask specifically. The police department, in fact, I'm not very good at drinking. Mickey bowed her head a little embarrassedly. Storekeeper, is there any drink that girls can drink? Lin Zihui took the initiative to ask the clerk. How about the highball wine? Although there is whiskey in the ingredients, it has been diluted with soda water. The taste is very light, which is very suitable for girls to drink. The waiter replied without hesitation. Lin Xiu turned to look at Mickey. Mickey nodded happily, and gave Lin Xiu a sweet smile. It didn't take long for the two very distinctive barbecue platters to be brought up by the waiter. The meat from various parts of the plate was cut into thin slices by exquisite knife skills and placed neatly on the white tableware. The beef is the best frosted beef, bright red meat studded with even white fat. It seems to have an appetite. The sauce is specially made by our restaurant. The beef doesn't need to be overcooked. It can be eaten as long as there is oil on it. Please enjoy it. The waiter walked out of the box after introducing how to eat. Everyone raised their glasses and toasted happily. Ah! Ha! It's really comfortable to have a drink after work. Lin Qiu drank one by one, and after the cold beer entered his mouth, he felt that all the fatigue of the day was swept away. The police department, can I ask you a question? After Mickey put down her glass, she suddenly asked Lin Xiaoyi. Of course. Mickey, you did a great job today. It's not easy to communicate with those children. Lin Qiu replied with a smile. Police, from the statement we reinvestigated with Kaoru Ishii today, although there are discrepancies in some places, most of the content is similar to the original record. Did I disappoint you? Mickey looked a little frustrated. He asked, although she had just come into contact with this case, but because the case of a case was not complicated, Mickey watched it all in the car. She originally expected that she would be able to ask something new from Kaoru Ishii today, but except for some time and details that were different from the last time, Kaoru Ishii's account of the incident was almost completely recorded in the transcript. Consistent. This made Mickey really frustrated. How can you let me down? Lin Qiu asked with a smile. The police department, so you have found a new clue. Hwagata suddenly regained her spirits after hearing what Lin Xiaoyi said. Aizawa, who was taciturn, also raised his head and looked at Lin Xiaoyi. I don't know if you have noticed, that Ishii Kaoru doesn't seem to be afraid of the suspect who harassed him. Lin Qiu reminded everyone. Ah! The police department, it seems like this. Nakayama Miki suddenly woke up and confirmed excitedly. Yes, that little girl seemed quite excited when she spoke, thinking that she scared the suspect away. Hua Xingtong nodded in agreement. Police, what do you mean? Aizawa didn't quite understand what the little girl's abnormal behavior could mean, so he quickly asked. Have you heard of Lokar's law of material exchange? As long as a criminal commits a crime, he will inevitably act directly or indirectly on the victimized object and its surrounding environment at the crime scene, leaving traces consciously and unconsciously. Lin Xiaoyi suggested. But shouldn't we go to the crime scene to see what traces there are? Why should we go to the victim to record the confession again? Mickey still asked incomprehensibly. The traces of crime I'm talking about not only include physical traces such as fingerprints and footprints, but in fact, what remains in the victim's mind. www.yukansha.com's impression of the perpetrator is also an important trace of crime. Lin Qiu explained to everyone. Police Department, I have learned the law of material exchange of Lokar, but this is the first time I have heard of your statement. But in the case of the victim Kaoru Ishii, this statement is indeed very reasonable. Aizawa, who had not spoken, suddenly spoke. Road. I've also heard of Lokar's law of matter exchange, but it's the first time I've heard of your statement that criminal impressions are also traces. Miki Nakayama nodded in agreement when she heard Aizawa's words. Forget it, let's not talk about this. My plan is actually like this. Can't we be sure if the suspects in the first 3 cases and the 4th case are the same person? Although we can't let the victims look directly at the deceased, however, we can confirm whether these cases are committed by one person from the victim's impression of the perpetrator. Even if this cannot be directly used as evidence for closing the case, it can at least allow us to grasp the direction of the investigation of continuous indecency cases. Is it really a single person committing crimes in succession? Lin Xiaoyi did not dwell too much on the issue of different interpretations of Lokar's law of matter exchange. Because this is not an academic discussion of criminology, but a specific analysis of the case. In fact, what Lin Zihui didn't know was that the inclusion of the mental traces of crime into Lokar's law of material exchange was actually a Soviet criminological theory. China's criminology theories were taught by the Soviet Union, while RB was taught by the United States. It is difficult to say which of the two different systems of crime theory is better, but now, the Soviet explanation is clearly superior. By the way, Aizawa, you will continue to visit the victim tomorrow with Mickey to see if there is a victim who has the same impression of the perpetrator as Kaoru Ishii. Hanagata, I will go to the fourth case tomorrow with me. Take a walk around the place and see what new discoveries you can find. Lin Zihui ordered. Judging from the evidence currently held by the police, the last case is currently the most valuable, and it is also the one that the criminal suspect is closest to fully committing the crime. If the 4 minor molestation cases are really committed by the same person, the murderer's criminal methods are obviously constantly improving, and the prey he chooses is becoming more and more challenging. The change in the suspect's criminal methods is also one of the traces described in Lokar's law of material exchange. If similar characteristics can be observed from the criminal method, combined with the criminal impression left in the victim's mind, the accuracy of determining whether the murderer is the same person will be greatly increased. In the past 2 days, Lin Zihui's department was divided into 2 divisions. Aizawa and Mickey went to visit the other 3 victims of molestation cases to investigate the criminal impressions that remained in the victims' minds, while Lin Zihui and Hanagata went to inspect the 4 molestation cases on the spot. The crime scene, and experience the changes in the criminal suspect's criminal methods. From the very beginning, Lin Qiu did not expect to find any traces of criminal suspects when he arrived at the scene. 3 of the 4 molestation cases occurred in a secluded alley, and the other occurred under a railway bridge. None of these places are enclosed sites, and the chances of leaving valuable material traces are minimal. Even if it does remain, there is a road there after all, and there will not be only traces of criminal suspects. It's impossible to tell apart. What Lin Zihui wanted to check was whether the suspect had any special preference for the location. Because for every criminal suspect, the subconscious will consciously follow some general rules for choosing a crime location. These locations are often places that the suspect is familiar with and feels comfortable carrying out the crime plan. In criminal psychology, this is called the criminal minimum effort principle and the criminal comfort principle. Given that the suspect had failed 3 times in a row before the 4th crime, Lin Zihui believed that the location of the 4th crime must be the suspect's choice after careful consideration. After Lin Zihui entered the alley where the suspect was found, he began to constantly explore the surrounding roads. Centering on the crime scene, he began to wander the surrounding alleys constantly, carefully observing his surroundings. Hua Xing, how does this place feel to you, or why do you think the suspect chose to be here? Lin Zihui suddenly asked Hua Xing. Police department, I don't think this place is good except for being secluded. By the way, it is secluded, and you can't see anyone in broad daylight. Hua Xing replied based on her impression. Secluded? Besides seclusion? Lin Zihui asked again. Then I don't know. Kagita answered honestly. As soon as Lin Qiu turned on his phone, he kept calling up the surrounding navigation on his phone to check the location of the alley where the incident occurred. It was an inconspicuous alley in a complex of buildings. There is a house on the left and right, but it seems that the owner is not at home. Because the mailbox in front of the door is full of advertisements. Look at the environment around this small alley. Because the surrounding is private residential land, the road is very winding, and it is not easy to get back to the main road from here without navigation. As soon as Lin Qiu walked to the doors of the 2 houses, he saw the advertisement inserted on the opening of the letterbox. He took it down and looked at it in his hand. Yotani Sushi, special opening price, new product launch on August 30th. Real estate promotion, Bunkyaku special real estate auspicious day material, recommended today, only for 1 day on September 1 st. Housekeeping cleaning service. Ninja Shaku Izakaya, Sea Bream Sashimi. A big deal on September 35. Lin Zihui patiently read all the advertisements in his hand, and occasionally took out his mobile phone to search for the location of these stores on the map, and finally put them back in their original places. The earliest advertisement in the advertisement was on August 30th, and the latest it is September 6th. This made him feel a little strange, so he walked to another empty house in the alley. The newspaper box in front of the door was also filled with these small advertisements. As soon as Lin Xiu picked it up, he patiently looked at the advertisements. In terms of time, it is actually similar to the previous one. Hua Xing, give me an evidence bag and take all these advertisements back. Lin Xiu took out the white gloves from his pocket as soon as he finished saying this, and then put the advertisement at the door of the second family into the evidence bag. Middle. The ads looked like they hadn't been touched in a long time, so there was a thin layer of dust on them. You take all these things back first, and let the colleagues of Kesuyan see if there are any fingerprints of the deceased on them. I'll stay at the scene and go around. Lin Xiu instructed the pair of flowers. Haha. Police department, do you want to leave the car for you? Just as Hua Xing was about to leave, she turned around and asked. No. Go back and hand over these things to Kesoyan as soon as possible, and tell them that there are already my fingerprints on them. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. With the help of the navigation map, Lin Zihui quickly walked out of this residential area, and he slowly came to the place where he was injured. At that time, he rushed here in a hurry and did not notice that it was a park. And the place where he fell is strictly a pond in the park. Lin Zihui found the manager of the park, and after revealing his identity, he asked the other party, "Excuse me, is there a charge for the parking lot here?" "Our parking lot doesn't charge," the park manager replied. "Then, can I ask you, are there any cars that have been parked for more than a month in the parking lot here?" Lin Zihui quickly asked. "The car is more than a month old. There seems to be a white light truck. It's really annoying. Even if there is no charge, you can't use public parking spaces like this. People these days are really..." The other party complained to Lin Zihui. "Can you take me to see it?" Lin Zihui asked excitedly. "Of course, please come with me," the manager said enthusiastically. At this moment, Lin Zihui's cell phone rang suddenly. "Police, I'm Mickey, we just left the third victim's home." According to the victim's description, the suspect is a very strong man, very fierce, and he threw her to the ground as soon as he came up. It was Mickey who was calling, and she anxiously introduced Lin Zihui about the impression she got from the third victim. Lin Zihui apologized to the enthusiastic administrator first, and then listened carefully to Mickey's report over the phone. After listening to the phone call, the hope in Lin Zihui's heart was dashed once again. According to Mickey's description, the suspect has changed so much that he doesn't look like a person at all. The Metropolitan Police Department, in the corner of the four-story underground garage, where a white closed light truck is parked quietly now. Colleagues from Kesu Research are doing identification work around the car. Everyone methodically took pictures of the truck and extracted the fingerprints on the door handle. After all this is over, they will open the door to further examine the interior. Search work. At this moment, Lin Zihui was standing behind Shenmue Takashi's intermediary police department, quietly waiting for the results of the investigation. The fingerprints extracted from the door handle and steering wheel of the vehicle will be sent to the Fingerprint Identification Department and compared with the fingerprints of the deceased in the port trestle case stored there. If it is confirmed that the car has the fingerprints of the deceased, then whether it is an important breakthrough in the case of continuous indecency, or the case of murder and abandonment of corpses on the trestle in the port area. Lin Xiu's cell phone in his pocket made a vibrating sound. Lin Qiu bowed slightly to his colleagues to apologize, then walked quickly to the corner and answered the call. Moses? Moses. The police department, Miss Cho has done fingerprint identification for those advertisements. It is as you expected. There are fingerprints of the victim, but the fingerprint extraction and comparison work has not been completed yet. I will inform you first. On the other side, Hua Xin called Lin Zihui as soon as she got the news. Although this result had long been expected by Lin Zihui, speculation is always speculation, and all police investigations always use evidence to speak. Through the investigation of the surrounding environment of the crime scene, Lin Qiu has a better understanding of the last consecutive molestation case. As a result, two questions formed in his mind. First, why did the criminal suspect appear in that area, where the road conditions are complicated? Even with the help of navigation software, it is not easy to walk from the alley where the crime occurred to the park, but the criminal suspect people can do it easily. In addition, the Shenmue Police Department specially arranged for the police officer in charge of that area to identify the photo of the deceased. The police officer in charge was quite sure that this guy was not a resident here. Second, why do criminal suspects think that there is an ideal crime location, or why does the principle of criminal comfort and the principle of minimum criminal effort exist at the same time? As long as these two issues are clarified, then the unreasonable aspects of this case will have a reasonable explanation. Lin Zihui finally noticed the advertisements in front of the house. That residential area is the quintessence of Bunkyo district, and almost every house has a market price of over 100 million. Because it is an upscale neighborhood, there are few noisy izakayas and shops around. Hua Xing said that there was a secluded place and no one could be seen. But for most RB people, they prefer to live in a quiet place. In this high-end residential area, there are a lot of promotional advertisements, and there are many kinds and patterns. It is easy to infer that these advertisements were delivered by specialized companies. Such a large residential area, with so many advertisements, is absolutely unreasonable without means of transportation. Another thing that caught Lin Zihui's attention was the time in the advertisements. Many of the advertisements were commodities, special promotions for catering, and limited time offers. From the distribution of preferential time, it is easy to arrange a time sequence for these advertisements. For a company that specializes in advertising, Lin Qiu once worked as a part-time job when he was in college. They demanded that they should not keep advertising to those residents who did not receive advertisements. Because advertising companies should also consider their own costs. After all, if this happens, there is a high probability that the house is out. However, the advertisements that appeared at the gates of the two buildings in the alley where the incident took place lasted about a week. If this was done by the criminal suspect, Lin Zihui was quite sure that the criminal suspect was stepping on the spot, and it was very likely that the suspect had the intention of burglary. These speculations by Lin Zihui can basically explain why the criminal suspect appeared there and why he thought this place was an ideal crime scene. However, in order for these speculations to become reality, evidence is needed. The fingerprints of the criminal suspect appeared on the advertisement, which undoubtedly made Lin Zihui's reasoning begin to approach the facts. Identifying the victim would be much easier if it could be shown that the car that had been in the park for over a month also had the victim's fingerprints. Just when Lin Zihui hung up the phone and planned to go back, the phone began to vibrate again. Lin Zihui took out his phone and saw that Miki's name appeared on the caller ID. Moses. Moses. The police department, it's me. Izuwei Zenpai and I have confirmed with the third and fourth victims. A few days before the incident, they all saw someone delivering advertisements nearby, but the first and fourth the second victim is not impressed. Miki's words were full of disappointment. I have a headache now, it seems that the suspects are not the same person. Lin Zihui said regretfully. Police department, how's the result of your fingerprint comparison? Izuwa suddenly asked aloud on the other side of the phone. You reading www. Yuyuganshu.com. The fingerprints on the advertising paper can already be identified as the suspects. The fingerprints on the truck are still being identified. Come back now. If the result matches our speculation, we can breathe a sigh of relief. Lin Qiu put it down after the call. He immediately returned to the Shenmue Police Department, and whispered the news from Hanagata and Miki to the Shenmue Police Department. It seems that your speculation should be the truth. It's amazing, Police Department Lin. But I suggest that you put the first 2 molestation cases aside for now, and fully cooperate with us in solving the Trestle Bridge case in the port area. The Shenmue Police Department patted Lin Zihuyi's shoulders, said with a smile. Haha. Lin Zihuyi lowered his head and responded. From the time the car was transported back to the Metropolitan Police Department to the extraction of fingerprints for identification, Kesuyan was busy for most of the day. Although the time to get off work has passed, no one has left, and they are all quietly waiting for the results to be released. If the fingerprints of the victim can be found on the car, the tedious work of identifying the victim can be over. It was not until about 11 o'clock in the evening that the identification on the Kesuyan side finally had preliminary results. We detected the victim's fingerprints on the door handle on the driver's side and on the steering wheel, basically confirming that the car was driven by the deceased. Where's the car? Who does it belong to? The Shenmue Police Department asked impatiently. It's under the name of an advertising and printing company in Tokyo. They reported to the Metropolitan Police a few weeks ago, claiming that they had lost a truck. Judging from the report information, it should be the one we found. A colleague in charge of intelligence replied. Do you know the name? Shenmue Police Department asked. Haha. It's Kandagawa Printing and Advertising Co., Limited.